in fact, we were asked to talk about best practices in campaign. And so I will shortly explain how Oxfam Magazine Le Monde is doing campaigning. I'm not sure if the title is appropriate because I feel a bit embarrassed of talking about the best practices we have. So I just want to explain how we do campaigning and what are the big challenges. And then I work with Susan. So first of all, I'm working for Oxfam Magazine Le Monde, and we are a Belgian fair trade organization. We are a movement of 4,000 volunteers, about 2,500 adults, and also 1,500 young people, because we have about 70 shops selling fair trade products in the French-speaking part of Belgium. But we also have 120 groups and schools, and that's a very important part of our movement. We're very active. Our mission is, in fact, we are part of Oxfam International. So we are part of a bigger confederation, and our mission is very clearly to fight against inequalities and injustices. And I think this is a very important point for our organization. We want to fight inequalities and injustices in a global and in a structural way. And that is where fair trade comes in. So if we try to explain our project, we often do it in 4 levels. And we say Oxfam Magazine Le Monde is, first of all, denouncing injustices. We want to show what is not going right. And the second thing is that we want to propose an alternative. So we have this fair trade as an alternative model. The third thing is in our project is we want to mobilize citizens. So we want to work with citizens and volunteers. And the fourth level is that we also want to question politicians and the ones who are making the rules. So I would like to say that these 4 levels, which is sometimes quite complex, are the identity of Magazine Le Monde. So how do we consider fair trade? And this is not something we just invented by ourselves. I also see that Julia from Oxfam Australia is there. We work within the Oxfam International Group also on defining together how do we see fair trade, also linking because a lot of us are a member of the World Fair Trade Organization. And I think there are 3 points that are very important for us when we define fair trade. That's first of all, fair trade challenges the root causes of unjust trade practices. That's one point. Second point is that fair trade is a business practice. I already said we have like 70 shops where we sell the products, where we show the alternative. And the last thing, and that's why we also think it's so important of being a member of WFTO, is that fair trade is really a movement. So we really want to focus on promoting fair trade, but we also want to make trade more fair. So I think having in mind the definition we have of fair trade explains why campaigning is very important for our organization. So concretely, I'm not saying that these are best practices because I will come back to the challenges, but when we try to do campaigns, in fact, in general, we have about 2 campaigns a year. It's not that complicated. We have one in spring. The biggest one is always the campaign we have between September and first is that in Belgium, the government is organizing, like in a lot of other countries, the week of fair trade. Well, it's a week, but in fact, it's 10 days. So it's 10 days of fair trade where the government gives a lot of means to other organizations to put forward. And that everything is about fair trade. So we thought that if we do a campaign, we really need to do the biggest campaign during that week of fair trade. We also have in that period 2 very important events internally, and that is in the beginning of October, as we have these youth groups in schools, and school starts in the beginning of September, we always do a very big event with about 500 young people in the beginning of October, where we launch the campaign. So that is a very nice opportunity. And the second internal event is what we call Oxfam Fair Trade Practice. And that's always in the middle of the week of fair trade. And in fact, it's an enormous event that we are now organizing for more than 20 years. And it's really a great opportunity to know fair trade. So we organize in one weekend about, these are figures of 2013, but I can say that the figures of 2014 were higher. So we organized in one weekend, in 2 days, and 200 different nations, breakfasts, and citizens of the community. But in total, we had last year about 35,000 people in the same weekend. So it's an enormous opportunity to raise awareness, to pass the messages, not to have this huge and very complicated messages about campaigning, but it is a way of telling in nice people what is fair trade about and what is our movement fight for. So very concretely, because this is like general, what we're doing campaign is that we need to plan everything 1 year in advance. That is concrete, what kind of theme we want to put forward, because if we do a campaign, it is based on an analysis, so we need research. So if we want to plan a campaign in 2016 on cotton, it means that the persons working within Magasin du Monde on content need to work that out, because we need like a good theory about why we are doing, because we want to denounce, but we also want to propose. The second thing is, and this is because doing fair trade, we want to show fair trade as an alternative. As themes is food sovereignty, decent work, gender, access to land, power concentration. We try to take certain themes that are important within fair trade and we focus on certain themes. I will show afterwards some examples of the campaigns we have been doing. Talk about at the end of this year on gender, because Patrick, my colleague who's here, will explain that in the next workshop. So like that, you're already invited. So that is one very important point. We need to plan everything 1 year in advance. And then the second thing is, what is very important is that we have a very clear campaign paper. I will not get into it details, but the first thing we need to do is to clarify what is the objective of a campaign. Do we just want to denounce? Do we really want to propose an alternative? If we want to mobilize people, why? What kind of public do we want to reach? Is this the big public? Do we want to reach politicians? It's very important to clarify in advance very well who's the public. To clarify the message and the slogan, and I feel like I'm going quite quickly through this, but it is a very important and complicated work because we really have this kind of tendency of passing extremely complicated messages that are not comprehensible for people. And it's finding the kind of balance. We talked a bit about it tomorrow, about being too negative and like people getting depressed. Finding the balance, real alternative. The idea is that we can mobilize people. So we should not just show the very nice smiley pictures. We should also let them see in what kind of sense this is a response to something that's not right. Then we go to already tools. When we do a campaign, volunteers in the shops is very important. So we try to work, we have an internal department, an education department, who works on translating the content that are people making in comprehensible tools that we can use in the shop that are quite easy. So if a client comes into the shop, that he knows what's the campaign about, but not necessarily like he wants to leave because we want to give too much information. We always try to link also the campaign with the product because it's really like showing an alternative. And we also create a lot of events. And I talked about the fair trade breakfast, but we also try to organize debates, local events, also events with the press. So that is very important that in the beginning of the year, for the campaign in October, we clarify all these issues. Then the second step is that we need a lot of time to translate the content of the campaign. So like I said, we have this educational department and communication department who work on folders, on videos that we make. Sometimes we link a new campaign with a new website. And then a very important point is the training of volunteers, because our shops are a kind of window of our organization. But if the volunteers in the shop are not aware of the content of the campaign, that is quite difficult. And it's not just a question of being aware, it's also about how to put them in action. And that is a big, big, big challenge. I will come back to that later. Because we have a movement of this, we have elaborated training program, but we never reach all of volunteers. So that is a big challenge. And then as well the communication strategy, where we have press releases for national, but more and more also for local press. The challenge there is to get journalists to our event, because I don't know how it is in your countries, but journalists receive so many invitations that you really have to be very creative to get them into your event. That we did in 2013 and 2014. So this is a campaign we did in 2013, and I tried to translate as comprehensible, but this is a campaign we did on food sovereignty in 2013. So we are, as Oxa Magazine Monde, specialized on crafts. We only import crafts, but we also sell in our shops food. So we work with other organizations together for food. So the campaigning we are doing is on food issues, but also on crafts issues, and also on, in the future, on cosmic issues. So this campaign was about the society that hungers, who produces food is ruining itself. So it's time to choose for another system. So these are kind of posters that we also put in our shops. Let's act here with farmers of the world. It's not that I want to launch here a debate on northern and southern fair trades, but just saying that in 2013, after a long discussion with our movement, we decided that if we just do fair trade with southern producers, that we are missing and we thought that as northern affair global solutions, and we started working on food also with farmers in the north. So a whole bunch of work on criteria. So the main message was about the control on your food system. Also, organization in Belgium, milk issue was to find with very big team news at that time with local farmers and to the smallholders agriculture if it's now in the north and the south. So that is we try to have some catchy pictures. This is the campaign we did last year. The campaign also at the end of the year, where we focused on the problem of power concentration. We also talked already about it this morning, about the big issue that 99% here has all. So we also looked forward were the orange juices of Brazil. So there was a kind of analysis of what is the problem of the market concentration in Brazil. Linked with decent work. And this is the campaign we are actually running. I have no idea of the timing, but this is, well, for the people who know a bit Belgium, this is the map of Belgium, and the campaign we are having is also linked with the campaign with the farmers, where already all to still work on smallholders agriculture. So we this is the campaign for spring 2015, and then for the end of the year, well, Patrick will explain that in the next workshop. So the big challenges is, first of all, well, the planning and the timing. I just presented it. It's very easy to say 1 year in advance, we need to focus. We every time have a problem of planning. We are every year too late. So that's a huge challenge. The second thing is to have some kind of continuity, because we try to have this focus on some principles like decent work and food, but it's not possible to just put your movement for 6 months on a team and then switch to another team. So we really need to work out that there's some kind of continuity. The message, I think we are always challenged of having a message that is concrete, simple, clear, and also positive in the sense that we denounce and we propose. But I think the main thing is that it has to be more simple. We are just trying to say too much in one phrase. The educational tools as well. We work with different publics, and we need to work better on how to make these tools attractive, but also give inspiration to people. The training of volunteers. And then the last one, and I think this is an interesting one also to think about within WFTO, is that we are part of different networks with their own agenda. And I think we are part of Oxfam International, we are part of WFTO, we are part of the Belgian Federation. Every network tries to work out an agenda, and I think for an organization, and maybe that's the same for a lot of you, it's very challenging to work out what agenda to follow. And I think, and then I'm coming back to where I think we have a huge challenge. If we have this big event on World Fair Trade Day, looking at all these challenges, we need to work out minimum a year in advance how we want to use all together the World Fair Trade Day as a huge. I don't say we need to do the same things, but if we have a proposal in February or May, we cannot work on that. It's just too late. We cannot put our volunteers on it. And at a certain time, we also need to choose, and I think it's really a big challenge for WFTO, because I really think that the World Fair Trade Day could be a huge
Just while we're waiting, has anyone not signed the sheet?
Yes.
Me.
They are good evening, everybody. My name is Suzanne Sahori, and as you see, I represent Bethlehem Fair Trade Artisans from Palestine, Bethlehem, Palestine. And we are created because we believe in having a pathway to fair trade in Palestine. In 2009, I liked the idea of fair trade. I'm a believer of fair trade. I attended 2 different networks in Bangkok, the first one, and the second one was in Belgium. People who are working with fair trade, and I was so much inspired of the idea. In 2009, Bethlehem Fair Trade was created. Now I should just click on this one. Yes, okay. We are located in the heart of the old city of Bethlehem. This is outside our offices, and this is just the sampling. And I'll tell a little story about this center where we are at now. This center was donated to Bethlehem Fair Trade Artisans to be used for 15 years without paying any rent. It's a project where you renovate old houses in Palestine and put them into use for communities. And because our community was created to alleviate the very small and very marginalized producers. Why BFTA? The idea of BFTA was conceived back in 2009 after a series of interviews. What we did in 2009, we visited. We were 4 Palestinians. We were just from all over the world. They were from England, from Italy, from the US, from my house, actually, where we all had just small computers and papers. We visited the producers at their homes. We went to their homes to even think and speak to them about the idea of fair trade. And why fair trade? Of course, it's a new concept, even in Palestine, even though there was an organization that's still a fair trade organization. But among people, among producers, the fair trade concept was not yet known at all. So by going through and visiting all these producers, we discovered that the number one issue that we have came up with, please, better sales for my products, a better price for my products. That was the number one that they all asked before even thinking about what is fair trade. So we developed our mission to develop the Palestinian handicraft economy into a sustainable source of income for artisans and their families, and to promote fair trade principles throughout Palestine by responding directly to the needs of citizens. Because our goals, I really don't want to go through the goals all together, but I'd like to speak more freely about our mission, why we started. We realized that when we put the sign outside in the heart of Bethlehem Fair Trade in Arabic and in English. So many women are passing by, many men are passing by and saying, fair trade in Arabic means tijara al-adila. So they come to the office to see what is fair trade. Why fair trade? And so we started to explain to them. So the interest was growing among producers, among women who are doing just weaving at home, women who are doing recycling. Challenges Palestinian artists really face. Of course, I don't know how many of you know the political situation in Palestine. We are faced with a political situation that sometimes you cannot plan. Economic isolation significantly hinders participation in the global economy. Not everybody can travel abroad to go to a fair. Not everybody can travel to go to business-to-business fairs or to the markets where they can show their products. Decrease in tourism due to the political strife. Now, we are in Bethlehem, and you know the conflict between Palestine and Israel, the isolations in Bethlehem itself. When something happens in Egypt or in Syria or in the whole region, that means immediately in front of the Nativity Church of Bethlehem, you see no tourists, you see nobody coming into Bethlehem. This is really one main issue that's always an obstacle. Many artisans need further education in order to represent. Now, education. A lot of the producers who are making the beautiful olive wood handicrafts don't know how to speak English, don't even know how to use the computer, and this is an obstacle for them in mixing with the international, or trying to even go on the computer. Marginalized artisans, including women. We are concentrating on women, getting to know those who empower them, disabled groups as well. Challenge that in raw materials and the middleman issue, unfortunately. This is very, maybe it's in other places as well. Practices. Now, if tourists don't come to us, we would like to bring the products directly to them by us going to business fairs or by other partners, our importers, international partners who are the products to the market. We educate that come out in our world. Now, when we translated the first time the fair trade principles into Arabic, it was so difficult because the language and Arabic to really translate it and then understand it. So anyway, we did summarize each point of the 10 fair trade principles, and we tried to give it to them to start reading. We can help them obtain raw materials. This is an object I will speak about, one of the challenges that we are facing as fair trade. I'm giving you just a list of what we are doing. Olive wood carving. medical glass for embroidery, ceramics, blown glass, olive oil soap, handmade jewelry, glass paintings, and felt wool. Now, the felt wool and the recycles are all made by handicapped groups, 4 special handicapped groups in the Bethlehem district. And this is some of the samples that are made by our artisans, development and fair trade practices. Now, when we started the first time, every event we try to do, it's to educate, to do development, but at the same time, we always talk about fair trade and why fair trade. This is a show for women, embroidery. You can see one of the bags here that's done by women, the red bag. But we are trying to have them, teach them color mixing, and how to quality also. Quality was very important. So this is one of the, every time we do a workshop or a training, fair trade principles are always the mainstream in our work. This is some of the products that they produce after the training. Now this is basket weaving training in Nablus. We are out of Bethlehem, Nablus. We brought a women from another village who are really quality to teach other women to do basket weaving. Let me say something for 2 minutes about our women and why is Palestine, because of the separation wall. I don't know how much of you have much information about Palestine, the separation wall. Came down, another wall was built, but unfortunately in Palestine, separating the Palestinians and the Israelis from each other. It's not a nice looking wall. After the wall was built in 2002, that means a high percentage of men were no longer allowed to get permits to travel into jobs. So women found themselves that they are now divided. So each one with her own talent, either within recycle, making things at home. And now the main thing is finding outlets for those women to sell the handmade products that they are making at home. They wanted to learn English. So we offered courses in English with Bethlehem University. It's only to practice the English, to talk to each other. And at the end of the courses, explain to themselves. If you come to see them and say hello to them, they can say who they are, what they work, and a little bit about their country. It was a massive, how many artisans, and it's only for artisans, men and women. And it was amazing the number of men and women who came and wanted to take those English courses. And so we always, fair trade comes in front of us. I mean, when they come to the course, we always talk about fair trade and why. But here, advanced IT courses, for the first time, we offer them computer courses just to be able to log on and Google other people, other countries, what is in the world, who makes the same products as what they are, and to get more educated about the courses, to be able to log onto the computer only. I mean, they don't have any idea. So it was an amazing course. Men, all ages. It was so amazing because they're all ages, young and old, and all ages came and attended. Women beading for a better future. We had a really nice teacher from the US who came and said, Hollywood blood after them story and really willing to learn and do so she can provide for her family. Insight about our fair trade activities. We also tried, as you said, about planning. Planning is always very difficult. So the first year, all we did is field visits from 2009 to 2010, just to visit the producers at their workshops. World Fair Trade Day, that was the first event, a really local event in Palestine that we make, where we were on the radio and then, TV, everybody was calling and wanted to interview the producers. We had such a huge outlet of producers all in the manger square of Bethlehem. It was the first time that so many have asked, what is fair trade? It was an amazing event where so many people have came and the idea of fair trade. Buy local, buy fair trade. I heard so many of the events that happen today. Buy local, buy fair trade. Always, depending on having the export into international countries is good, but also we realize that in Palestine itself, not many people appreciate our own handicrafts. I buy other products instead of having a bag that's made by our women or wearing a ring that's made by our women. No, I'll go and buy something different, something designed. So we tried to invite, and we invited official government. This was invitations to governments, Ministry of Economics, Ministry of Tourism, and at the same time we invited schools, and we had games during the event about fair trade. It was, of course, all translated into Arabic. We had a fashion show that was done by women, also very talented women, and different banks. We invited banks, companies, in order to show them that instead of you buying something from China, you want to give your customers a gift, then think about those women producers. Come and visit them, and each table had something special on the table and an idea. We created ideas for the local community to be able to use for their own homes. These are some. The World Fair Trade Day, we had different, this is really outside our office. I'll talk about the other more pictures of groups of visitors who are coming with the Fair Trade, Fair Peace project. This is really one of the most challenging projects for us because we are partnered with an Israeli organization called Sindiana of Galilee, who some of you I think know and work with. Sindiana of Galilee is an Israeli organization. We are a Palestinian organization. We wanted to bring the women together, make the soap together, and we signed together a message: fair trade, fair peace, a political message that says freedom for Palestinians, this for both Palestinians and Israelis. This project was really challenging because first it talks about fair trade, at the same time it's politically. And having been able to work with an Israeli organization, it's a huge challenge for us, where we were called by many local Palestinians, you should not be working with those women. But we said we are working with artisans, we are working with art. I am not working with politics, I am working only with art, handicraft, and fair trade. Just coming together from both sides. We broke the wall, actually. We are meeting in Beit Jala, where they are not allowed to come. We are not outside Israel. You know how hard it is to coordinate the joint product by emails, by Skype, okay, is this product okay? And we are trying to do a gift product where at the same time it has the message with it from both sides. Signed by us, signed by them. And this is the challenge was really for us. Details are very sensible to speak about pricing, health, and environment, which is really a main concern for us as Palestinians, and main concern for the Bethlehem artisans, the olive oil producers in Palestine. We explained to them the challenge, the danger is that in 20, 30 years, if you are not careful, if your workshop is not healthy, that means you are harming yourself, and then also you are harming people around you. Pricing, really, they don't know how to price. Pricing, they just put this, how much did this cost you? $2. And then I read cost him at least $5. To teach them, that day she needs money. She sells it for 100 shekels. You know how much it cost her? 350 shekels, which is about like 80 euro. But she sells it for 20 euro for that day because she needs the money. She doesn't realize that too much she's been embroidering to finish it, how much time it took her, the raw materials. So we're trying to teach them and that they need. This is really the environment and fair prices. Alternative fair trade tourism, we are trying to connect the visitors who come to Palestine, Palestine, Bethlehem especially, is a well-visited country in the world because of the Nativity Church, at the same time because of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem and the mosque in Jerusalem. So many pilgrims come. Of course, as Muna Said, also from Egypt, said that everyday pilgrims, when pilgrims come through a big tour company, they never think about coming to Bethlehem Fair Trade. They don't. So we are trying to promote, come and meet the producers directly. If you go to a souvenir shop and you buy this beautiful handicraft, but you never appreciate it unless you meet the person behind it. If you meet them, then you met the person who made this. So we're trying through fair trade tourism to connect the alternative tourism to come and meet the producers. And BIFTA continues to improve. We are trying to really improve by learning ourselves as BIFTA staff and also as producers in Palestine, because it's a learning process for us. Even though we've been since 2012 Fair Trade WFTO members, but I must be very honest with you, until this year, and the end of last year, I myself, as Suzanne, have understood what does it mean to be fair trade. Why fair trade? It is a practice that I felt, even though I got the logo too in 2000. But to understand it, so I need to explain to you about other things. We were successful. We last serve a very great that was do the peer visit. We've learned so much. Is the peer visit important? It helps us really manage ourselves better, come to the internal monitoring system. The training that was done for us as employees and the training that was done for the producers, like wow, now I understand what does it mean to be fair trade. And there are so much weaknesses that we found on the ground that develop and work on. Only when we realize there's so much to be done. Is it actually reporting? We have now reports. We usually do documents. So we brief the staff as well as our producers about fair trade and its principles, how to be really fair. And this is a practice that yet we are all together learning. I will talk a little bit about, I don't even know the time also, but
workshop's meant to be finished now, so.
Oh, okay. Well, the main really problems and concerns for us as Palestinians. Any day, that means we cannot export. Something happens inside Israel, or a bomb. Something happens in Egypt. That means we are really paralyzed. This is the main concern that and a problem that we face as the producers. Now, people work with us on the health and safety for the olive wood producers in Palestine. We work with 53 olive wood producers, but there are about another 100 in Bethlehem or other cities. That the health issue is a major issue with us, and I think together with the governments need to support us in really creating a better environment for our producers. It's really a major problem. It's like saying, okay, he's not healthy. I should just close his workshop. But please, I think this is if we all really care about the people, we need to support each other. It's all very marginalized. When I'm talking about the father, the mother, and the son working together, trying to make a living throughout the year. We are living in a country politically where we don't get a pension. Nobody gets, unless you are a government employee, you get a pension. Unless you have a son or a daughter, hopefully when you are older, they can take care of you. So that means future sustainability is a mission also we are trying to accomplish. Thank you. I think.
Because finish about now. The next thing is 3:30 and then next workshop at 4. Do you want to hear my presentation? Okay,
Yeah.
that's not practice in fair trade campaigning, but I'm particularly going to draw on the experience of Tradecraft. I used to work for Tradecraft for 12 years. Many of you will know Tradecraft is a pioneer of fair trade in the UK. You probably best know it as a trading organisation, but it also has a development charity arm with a policy, particularly through that policy work that a lot of our campaigning carries on. A lot of what I'm going to say is actually very similar to what Sophie's already said. It's a slightly different format, but it reinforces maybe some slightly different slants on 2 points. Like Magazine du Monde, we don't have a campaign opportunity program. But as with Sophie, the very first thing is to plan very carefully what you're going to do. And first of all, I think, what are you actually trying to achieve by your campaigning? Campaigning can do lots of different things. Often, for Tradecraft, what we're really wanting is a change either with or with business, to effect. Sometimes we're just trying to create awareness about issues, and we don't think it's going to create lasting change in terms of policies or what actually happens, but it may actually change the way people think about things. Actually thinking about, because some of our campaigning, we know as well as working towards a policy issue, will also be about helping individuals, our supporter base and our customers to begin to understand things and change the way they live slightly differently. It encourages them and enthuses them. They like to think, oh, Tradecraft's really trying to make a difference here. That's another reason why I like to buy products from Tradecraft or support its activities. And we also find campaigning is a good way of getting new people to come and sign up to join the organisation. It gains some visibility. They can say, oh, I believe in that sort of thing, and find out more about Tradecraft. And because campaigning is very visible, it's a very good recruitment tool. It's also often about more sales. So the Fair Trade Foundation in the UK, we have a Fair Trade fortnight, 2 weeks, sort of which the supermarkets, in particular in the UK, tend to get behind. And that campaigning is all about driving more sales. And it's a very important tool for the Fair Trade Foundation to get companies to launch new fair trade products because it gives them a deadline and a specific goal. And it means that retailers are likely to want to try out something new so that they can show that they're getting behind fair trade as well. So that's a long way from policy change. It's a very practical approach. And indeed, sometimes our campaigning, we know, is largely going to be about fundraising and by raising awareness, getting people to want to back a cause as part of a longer term program. So there's lots of different things that we can be trying to achieve. But when you know what your goal is, you can then decide who's your target, who is the group or the individual that you are trying to influence. Quite often, politicians, civil politicians in drafting a piece of legislation may be a senior civil servant. So you're wanting to get hold of them, not necessarily the government minister. It may be that government's going to have nothing to do with this, but it's a business leader or the head of buying and sourcing for a large multinational. Or if it's one of those more general campaigns, or it might be a specific group within that, older women, fair trade supporters, whatever groups. And having decided which of the groups you need to influence to achieve your goals, that will help you decide what are the right means for your campaigning. Now, traditionally, a lot of campaigns focus around petitions, where people just sign to say, I agree with this, to show a level of support. Often, we would encourage supporters to write letters to a politician, for example, and quite often you might give a standard letter that somebody can just put their own address and signature on, or even just sign a postcard and put that in a postbox. And of course, these days, all of those things can be done electronically through the internet as well in different variations. A lot of people in the UK ask me, does it really make any difference if I sign a postcard or if I sign a petition? Does anybody take any notice? Isn't this just a waste of time, really? At one level, it is a bit of a waste of time, and it's certainly better that people write an individual letter than just sign a postcard. But talking to British politicians, they say, if you get 3,000 postcards arriving on my civil servant's desk, then they will bring them in for me to see, and they will say, we've got an issue we maybe need to start thinking about. It's a critical number, about 3,000, that's needed in the British system in order to make change. But at that level does actually make a difference. Tradecraft has about 30,000 supporters, and we actually pretty much know that when we launch a campaign, we will get at least 15 to 20,000 letters or postcards that will land on a politician's desk. So we can actually set at least the beginning of an agenda on a minister's sort of desk through this means. But much more visible are things like marches and demonstrations and publicity stunts. The danger with a march or demonstration is if you don't get a lot of people out there, it could look rather pathetic. You have 12 people care about this issue at all. So you have to be quite cautious. And for Tradecraft is quite a small organisation, we generally wouldn't organise a march demonstration on our own. We want to do that with others where we can be sure we'll get it. But that impressive photograph there was actually 7 members of our policy staff with a banner. And you can do a lot with a good camera angle to make it look as though you have got a mass movement. And if you can then get a newspaper to publish it, nobody will know. So you can use these things sort of very creatively if you need to. But often what we're really trying to gain, you can tend to focus in a campaign team on we need more petitions, we need lots of people for this demonstration. But actually what you're wanting to do more often than not is to get a one-to-one meeting, one of your chief executive or some other leader or somebody you're trying to influence. So your end goal is to get a meeting where you can actually have some negotiation and put things forward. That's one of our former prime ministers, Gordon Brown. And I just put his picture up because there's a wonderful story about, again, to prove why actually sometimes letters do work. His civil servants brought in a little selection of petitions that had been received as part of the campaign. And people had stuck a little pound coin onto a postcard and sent them in. And they just took a random selection and put it into his the red box they get at the end of every day. And he was leafing through and he found one from his mother. Dear Gordon, why aren't you doing more about this, Mum? So that was probably the best bit of lobbying that he was going to respond to that you can imagine. But you have to get your messaging right, and Sophie was talking about this. Quite often, we get very involved in the detail and the complexity. And Tradecraft ran campaigns for quite a few years while I was there about economic partnership agreements negotiated between the European Union and countries around the world, trading countries around the world. And I got really interested in this, and I could see some of the advantages of EPAs and some of the drawbacks. And I really wanted to go to politicians and say, this, well, I like this bit, and I don't like that bit, and you could make this even sort of stronger. But it got all very confusing. And when we tried our first round of campaigning like that, we didn't get access to any politicians. They didn't think we had a clear enough message to make it worth engaging. And our supporters just couldn't understand what we were going on about. So we then went for a much simpler message, which was simply, stop them, stop EPAs. And that was a bold, strong, simple slogan. Our supporters could get behind it. And we could say, we've got to stop this process because we need to negotiate and make them fit for purpose and able to do it. So simple, strong messages are important both for supporters and for the people you're trying to get through to. Another example of that, we were doing campaigning about cotton and the American cotton subsidies, which were making life very difficult for cotton farmers in West Africa and elsewhere. So this was some of the materials aimed at our producers. Actually, very, very complicated. I don't think that was very effective. Much better was simply a stunt. Somebody dressed up as Barack Obama cut unfair, cotton subsidies, pair of scissors, that gets impact, that gets effect. Now, of course, behind all of that, you do need to have sort of more resources that can back that up and go into more detail. But if you haven't got the simple message and the clear image, you're not going to cut through and get people to react. But you do sometimes be careful about simple messages. Sorry about this. Okay, so this was a campaign we ran in order to try and influence the tea industry. Level of success, quite a cut through tea. We got 90,000 people sending postcards in to tea company leaders, one of the biggest responses we'd ever had. And we thought, this is wonderful. But the tea industry leaders we were trying to influence didn't want to talk to us because they felt insulted that we were saying that they were causing real problems. We'd caused offence, which had enthused our supporters, but actually it had turned off the people we wanted to talk to. And so it was, in a way, counterproductive. I got one meeting with the managing director of a tea company, and he basically said, I don't want to know because you've just told me you are enemies of my company. We hadn't found the win-win situation. So sometimes the danger is you get carried away with your own rhetoric and momentum, and that isn't actually going to achieve the goal of change that you want. But again, with Sophie, I mean, this should have come at the beginning in a way, but when you've got that meeting with the influencer that you wanted, you need to have real understanding of the issues that you want to talk about. So we would have detailed policy reports in the background, briefings for members of parliament, members of the European Parliament, if that was relevant, best practice guides that we could give to companies. And that has to really have hard facts and things which people are going to believe are credible and significant suggestions, well rooted in evidence. If you don't have that, again, you can get your meeting changed, very well briefed. They will have advisors and others who know, will probably put all the opposite arguments before them. And if you aren't able to advocate what you believe, then you're not actually going to have success. Well, Sophie talked about training your campaigners, and often you're wanting them to spread the message locally. So you need those resources to enable them to be confident about talking, but you also need to have posters and leaflets or products use to make them confident. And several times today, working with partners, it's much more effective to campaign with other organisations. It gives you more credibility and more people. So probably one of the biggest campaigns in the UK was Make Poverty History back in 2005. Almost all of the NGOs and many other civil society organisations got behind that campaign, and it made a big impact. And it's one of the reasons why supermarkets in the UK, I believe, started to stock fair trade, because they saw there's a groundswell of people interested in poverty issues and how we relate to suppliers around the world. On the right-hand side there, we've been campaigning for many years to get regulation of supermarkets because of their power over suppliers. And we did that together with War on Want, ActionAid, Friends of the Earth, a number of other well-known NGOs, so that we could, often we're trying to influence European policy, and the Fair Trade Advocacy Office, Sarah G is here this week, we find an extremely important partner for us. And for European campaigning work, you need to have people from several European countries, organisations from several European countries, in order to get noticed. So we will often work with other members of WFTO and EFTA in order to get that alliance that you need to come through. But you do need to be prepared to be persistent. We had this supermarkets campaign. That's a government minister there, acting like a snail because it's so slow. We were campaigning on supermarkets for over 5 years before we actually got a regulator established. We had to carry on being persistent over the long term. if you just want 1 year campaign, you may be lucky, but probably you're not going to follow it through. So I'd encourage you to think long term in your campaign. And you may want several different angles on the same issue, but recognize it will take time to get through. We now do have a regulator established in the UK, but on the left-hand side, we found we had to do a secondary campaign because they want to set up a regulator to whom suppliers could complain if the supermarket was abusing their power. They didn't want to give them any power to do anything about it. So we had to do a separate campaign saying, if you have a watchdog, you must have teeth. And we went to the ministers responsible, and they said, no, we're not going to change this. So we lobbied lots of MPs, we put on these sorts of stunts. And at the end, when the Act was about to go through Parliament, the government minister says, we're not going to give these powers. Every single member of Parliament in that debate stood up and said, Tradecraft has told me it needs more teeth. I think we need more teeth. And actually, they had to change the law at the very last minute because we were prepared to be persistent. And so there is now a supermarket regulator who has the power to fine quite significantly. I think several percent of a supermarket's turnover can be fined if they're found to abuse their own code of practice. Now, I've just been elected last weekend onto the board of a supermarket group, so I'm now hoisted by my own petard, and I'm going to be regulated by this powerful regulator, so I may come to regret this campaigning activity. But it's also a nice example of it's good to be creative and fun in your campaign. You can be very serious because the issues we deal with are serious. But actually, a lot of people will get depressed by that, and you need to create something which will give imagination and creativity. So dressing up as dogs, dressing up as cows, mood eaters there. Again, it helps people to connect and to get visibility, and it's very good for getting media coverage as well. So one of the things that campaign is don't be too serious. You've got to have serious stuff in the research, but the front end needs to be quite jokey and fun. My very last slide is just to say that there is a very useful and free sort of toolkit on the Tradecraft website, the reference at the bottom there. And if you go onto that page, there's quite a few individual policy documents, but you'll find this campaign resources pack there as well. And that gives a lot of guidance. It's there to train supporters in how to get campaigns going locally. And a lot of these best practice ideas you'll find in there. So I'd really recommend that as a free document that may be useful to you. Thank you. So if you need to go, please go. If you want to stay and ask questions now during this break, I'm sure we'll be very happy to stay and answer questions. So, does anybody want to? Oh, sorry, yes. Any other comments, challenges, questions? Have we missed something out?
Thanks for the very interesting presentation. I'm a campaigner for Oxfam as well. When you talk about the link between advocacy and awareness raising, do you always have the same format? You raise awareness, you make noise in the media, and then you afterwards do the advocacy because you cause the attention of the general public, and then you go to the policymaker with this kind of signature dimension. Is that the usual format you always use?
We don't always, because sometimes we know we can go straight to the policymaker and just talk to them, and we don't need to spend all of this money on campaigning because they may be interested. So there was one of the slides up there called Stephen Timms, and he was a supporter of Tradecraft. So we knew that we could go and talk to him without needing a campaign first. So we would often try and do that. Likewise with business leaders, we would just go and try and talk to them quite often without the campaigning. But it's when you have resistance, or sometimes for a politician, they need the political will to take a stand, or to be able to say the public want this. This isn't just the public want it. And so sometimes we find politicians invite us to campaign because that will create a momentum which will allow them to introduce a proposal. So Gordon Brown, whose picture I put up there as Prime Minister, when he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, he was actually the person who decided the Make History campaign, which I said is one of the biggest campaigns we ever had. He called together the NGOs and said, look, I and Tony Blair would like to make some real moves on global poverty agenda, but we can only do that because it wasn't in our manifesto if you can show evidence that the general public would support it. So we were knocking at an open door, if you like. So there the campaigning was to give them the credibility to make some significant changes that they wanted to. So it can work in lots of different ways.
So I'm wondering what labels or certifying organizations does TradeCraft support or recognize? And then I have a side question to that.
Okay, I'm no longer at TradeCraft, but I think they use the flow label on